No practice with that at all. So hello everybody behind the big glary lights. There you are. So I'm Jim Benson. As Paul said, I wrote the collaboration equation book recently. You probably might know me more for the lean coffee and personal Kanban and Kanban stuff that I did when I had less gray hair. But today we are going to talk about seeing work, which doesn't sound very exciting, but I will tell you right now that nothing anybody has talked about today will work if you don't see your work. You can't have psychological safety if you don't know what's going on. You can't plan your work if you don't know what's going on. You can't manage your team if you don't know what's going on. You can't blah, 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 blah if you don't know what's going on. And if you can't see your work, you're not going to know what's going on. So everyone here is like, hey, I've got Jira. Isn't that good enough? It's like, no, because Jira is the most rubbish. Thank you. That was better than what I was going to say, and I couldn't think of anything else that didn't start with the letter F. So people avoid boring things, all right? And Jira is boring, and Asana is boring, and Trello is boring, and Kanban is boring, and I'm saying that as one half of the people on Earth that invented Kanban, okay? It's really boring to watch your work do this every day and not give you any additional information. So the word feedback was just in the last talk, right? Feedback is something that we get naturally from a system. So if you have a guitar and you're playing the guitar, you don't say, oh, hey, every 2 weeks I'm going to get feedback from my Marshall stack. You know, you get it immediately. Feedback is a closed loop. It's something that happens immediately. So your visual controls need to give people, see, it's like in green. Oh, hey, if I'm over here. See, it's like in green. If I was down here, if this monitor had me on it, I could do the whole Muppet thing. I could know exactly how my Muppet Jim was working. But we need information in order to get our jobs done. And when we have that information, that's when we get psychological safety. That's when we understand what the plan is. That's when we understand our pivots, our experiments, our jargon and buzzwords and stuff. So, who am I and why? Why am I this way? So, I grew up in the middle of Nebraska, which is something that no one in Europe could possibly imagine because nothing is farther away from anything else in all of Europe than where I grew up is from anything at all. So I grew up like in this little town called Grand Island, Nebraska, and I was in a punk rock band called the Boat People, and we were the only punk rockers in mostly all of Nebraska in the late 70s and early 80s. And we had to learn how to play our instruments. We had to learn how to sell records. We had to learn how to trick people into coming to our concerts. But we sold our albums all over the world. No internet, right, at all. Somehow we managed to do that. So we had to learn all of these lean and agile tools before anybody was going to tell them that's what they were. After I spent a year trying to be a professional punk rocker. I realized that if I did that, I would either become a heroin addict or rich, but rich wasn't likely. So heroin addict wasn't attractive, so I went into urban planning and civil engineering. I built freeways and subways and giant things with teams of hundreds of people, more than a pizza. Anybody who says that a team is size 7 plus or minus 2 needs re-education. We built things successfully with very large teams. So one of those things that I built was the NAMES Project AIDS Memorial Quilt, the largest memorial and public art project in human history. I was involved with that from 1989 to 1999. When I left, everybody wanted to kill me because I was very burnt out and should have left 5 years before. But it was the most successful thing I will ever be involved in. And it was all about visualizing the AIDS pandemic in a way that wasn't threatening and allowed people to get their work done. And that work was stopping people from being killed from AIDS. Pretty awesome. Its slogan was "See it and understand," because apparently I haven't had an original thought for a while, or maybe because these themes keep coming up in my life. So blah, 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 all the other stuff. And you'll be happy to know that in a couple of months, I will have a new album out. And like most ex-punk rockers, I now do ambient music. So I have an ambient and Chapman Stick album that will be coming out in a month or so. And you can listen to that, and then you can really criticize me. So, the collaboration equation, which Paul mentioned, individuals in teams create value. That is the equation. No team exists without people in it. No value is created without people creating the value. And no value is created by an individual. There's only one thing that two things that people do without anybody else around. Three things that people do without anybody else around, and we can't talk about them. So anything that we can talk about is done usually with you, a couple other people, and a customer. That is a team, right? And so there are conversations in there that create work, and it is our job, no matter what we're doing, no matter what process religion we belong to, it is our job to make work more humane, to make sure that human beings are taken care of when they're working. So, what happens from here on out is basically Jim Benson's big slideshow. I'm going to talk about a lot of people and tell a lot of stories in 53 minutes and 16 seconds. So, the first person I'm going to talk about is Kevin Chase. Kevin Chase in the is the guy standing in this picture over here on your far left. And he was a procurement agent at Turner Construction in New York City. A procurement agent is someone who spends all the money. So if you have $1 billion project, you have to have someone who spends the $1 billion. That was Kevin. As you might be able to guess, that doesn't work. As you might be able to guess, that's pretty stressful. There are a lot of ways, there's no other way to put this. There are a lot of ways to fuck that up, and when you do, people let you know. So what used to happen was Kevin there would talk to Charlie there in the picture every single day. And he would talk to the other Charlie, because there were two of them, Charlie Whitney and Charlie Murphy. He would talk to the other Charlie every day, and he would talk to his other boss every day, and he would tell them all what they were doing. 3 consecutive stand-up meetings in which Kevin received feedback. All right, so Turner, great company, very collegial, wonderful people. Every day they would give Kevin feedback to help him out. Now imagine every day you go to work, and then you're like, oh man, I don't even know what feedback I'm going to get about this one. So then feedback becomes adversarial, even if the people involved are super awesome, right? So we wanted to build a system that would allow Kevin there to get all of the mentoring and help that he could from the people that he worked with, while not having them judge or second guess the work that he had done the day before. That sounds pretty cool. So the first thing that we did was we did a value stream mapping exercise, which is the middle picture. And we did that with a lot of different people. It took us months to map the procurement process for Turner. The way that we do a value stream map is different than the way that most lean people will do a value stream map, where they'll do it and they'll like say, this happens, and then there's a gap, and then there's 15 seconds where nothing happens, and then people are idle for 11 seconds, and oh, that's terrible. What we do is we map it out, and we say, hey, somebody's got it here, and somebody's got it here. Is the handoff clean? Are they happy with that? Does this piss somebody off? How is this going through here? Are people upset? Are they happy? Are they okay? And what we find is that when we do that humane-based value stream mapping, when we're paying attention to the people and not the process, the opposite of what we're told to do, that almost all of the process problems end up going away because they all annoy somebody, right? Which is different than going in and looking at the process and saying, hey, we're wasting 11 seconds here. Screw that. So when I do this and this person gets mad. How about they're not mad anymore? Oh, look, the 11 seconds isn't a problem anymore. So we map it. As you might guess, Kanban guy builds a damn Kanban. So this is in Kevin's Obeya. The third picture there is in his Obeya. And in his Obeya is where the magic happens. So when you do what I do and you're running around for decades helping people not hit themselves repeatedly in the face with their own work, after a while you get very tired of failure. Because Agile doesn't work. And lean doesn't work. None of this stuff that we're talking about here today works, but people do. And so sometimes you get those people that actually get what we're trying to build. So we have this board here, and in it, every day, Charlie Whitney, Charlie Murphy, Frank, everybody else will come into that room, and they'll check out what Kevin's been working on. And you can see that there are things in there that are flagged, green, red. You can't see the yellow very well, but there's different flags up there calling different people to action, right? So Kevin Chase, on one particularly snowy evening, is standing in this little tiny room with this board and the other visualizations you can see around it, and all of the HR people from Turner are there. So Turner is a multinational corporation. They're actually part of the Hochtief organization out of Germany. And they have a lot of different projects. And they have a lot of HR people. So they're all there, and they ask Kevin, say, Kevin, does this help your work-life balance? And Kevin's like, I work in construction. Nothing is going to help my work-life balance. I'm here early. I go home late. That's just the way construction is. And he says, but what happens now is I used to have these 3 meetings every day with these guys, and every day I didn't know what they were going to say, and every day I had to defend what I had done the day before. And it was tough. And when I made a mistake or when something felt wrong, I never knew when I should approach these other people. There were no rules for there were no triggers for when I should act appropriately. And so he says, now, whenever something changes and I need Charlie or I need somebody else to help, or I'm working on something and something's wrong and I don't need their help, it's all on the board. He says, they look at the board now every day. He says, and that lets me act with confidence. This isn't a Jim Benson slogan. Those are the words that came out of Kevin's mouth, and I just about died. I was like, oh my God. Because it's not because he said acting with confidence, which is a really cool couple of words. It's because I realized that no one actually ever does act with confidence because we don't have the clarity that we get when we visualize our work. So, fast forward, and things move over to that picture on the right, which I will show you now in a bigger format. The wonder. I never do slide. I hate PowerPoint. I hate slide decks. You guys, this is like a treat. You can say, I saw Jim Benson, and he actually had a slide deck. People, no fucking way. It's like, no, really, he did. So this is that project when it's actually live. Coney Island Hospital project in Brooklyn, now known as the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Hospital. What you're seeing there is their Obeya. An Obeya is a room in which all of the visualizations that a team is using lives. And yes, it can be online. It's okay. It can be electronic. It's all right. What you see here on this screen is on the far right is the procurement Kanban. Just to the left of that, there's a heat map of who's working on site at the time. At the top, there's a time series visualization because, yes, we do have deadlines in our world. They really do exist, no matter how agile we want to be. In the corner there behind the guy in the pink shirt is a bunch of pictures, and I'll talk about those in a second. Next to that, safety data. All that information runs around the screen. The motto of this project is we solve problems immediately and together. On this day, there's a problem, and they're solving it together. So the pictures on the back were in one corner of the land. There was supposed to be a water table that was a certain height. It was actually much wetter than they had expected, and they couldn't put in the footings, the foundations for the hospital. That guy who's staring at his computer and on the right side of the screen there, he was the engineer that had done that soils analysis, and he came expecting to be sued because construction loves to sue people. It's like its second most favorite thing to do. So the guy in the pink who's kind of hiding in the background there, his name was Chris Christensen, and he told that guy, no, we don't sue people here. We solve problems. We're going to solve a problem today or tomorrow. Sit down, and we're going to solve it. And that guy looked like he was going to cry. He had all this data and everything to back up his things. So Chris is like, it's wet, dude. Let's just figure out how to solve it. And so everybody that's in there isn't part of that part of the project. This is a cross-functional team of different people coming together to solve that problem immediately. And if that can work on a $1 billion hospital project with incredible time pressure, with 150 people working on it in the trailer and over 1,000 people working on it on site, we can damn well do that when we're building software. So they responded nice, they did all of those things, but then they did the yellow thing, which is when COVID came up, every other construction project in the whole organization called back to the home office and said, what do we do? These people went into that room and sat down and said, what do we do? And then what they came up with became the model for what happened on all the other construction projects worldwide. That, for me, is a measure of success. So, visual PDSA, I'm just going to talk about this really quickly, PDSA. So one of the reasons why I made this super detailed slide deck is so that you all could get it and look at it later with all of the little words, right? So listen and pay attention to me and don't look at the screen so much. There's a lot of words on there, way too many words, but the reason is so that the slide deck will be useful later. So you'll see the word together in there a lot. So it's not just plan, do, study, adjust. It's plan together, do the work together, study the work in context together, adjust with confidence because you have done all of those things together. You're not running around doing feedback by telling other people what you did. Everybody has feedback because they're involved with doing the work with you in real time. So, this thing. This is the crux of the whole thing. This is something that we came up with, and we just kind of thought it was a nice thing for us to have when we were working with clients. And after a couple of presentations, it became very clear that this was a thing. So we're really going to go deep on it today. So we have 7 elements of visual management. You'll see the cranky thing up there that this is not the 7 elements. So if anybody ever says these are the 5 steps to the epiphany, or this is the 24 steps to changing your shoes or whatever, they're always lying. They're trying to sell you something. So these are just 7 elements. And there will be more. You will have different ones because you're different people. But what we found is these seem to be fairly universal. So our work is a story. And PDSA is a story. It is a full story arc. Planning, getting the idea of what the story is about, doing, running into all sorts of obstacles, studying, going, oh my God, obstacles, and then adjusting, being, oh, this is the way that the story's pivoting and moving around. When we set up just a Kanban in an online tool, it does not provide us rich enough information to manage and deal with that story. So we've got 7 elements here, which are direction and state, triggers, narrative, identity, professionalism, and culture. And as we go around, we'll see that these follow the PDSA arc. So planning. Anybody who follows me on LinkedIn knows that I lost my kittens the other day because LinkedIn was filled with all of these. I'm tired of planning. I'm agile. I should not have to plan. Everything is emergent. Emergence is wonderful. No, look, no matter how iterative you are, you have to start somewhere and you have to end up somewhere. And if you start without knowing where you want to end up, then you're just screwing around. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that you're stuck to your plan, but it means that you made a plan and you got to own it. So, no estimates? You estimate every second of every day. I estimate that this step is about this high. I estimate that I've got enough water in my water bottle to not get dehydrated. We estimate things all the time. What we run into is a problem where we fetishize certain aspects of working together, and then when they fail us, we throw them out. So, as you can tell, I have no opinions about these things, and I don't get emotional ever. Okay, so planning. Element 1 in direction. This is where we have our plans, our backlogs, our known upcoming work, and the assumed collaborations that fit in them. What are we going to do? Who are we going to do it with? How long is it going to take? All that kind of boring planning stuff. Okay, we do this together. We understand that when we're doing it together, we're setting up a set of assumptions, we're visualizing our assumptions, and then we're going to be thrilled when they change, when they meet reality. Okay? If you don't plan, or you only plan in 2-week increments, you will put blinders on yourselves, you will not have a long-term vision of your product, and you will fail. You will make crap. You'll make crap really quickly. You'll be super efficient at it, but it will be crap. So direction on your board is planning. So here's some stories about this, and my stories are going to get faster as I go along. So there's Turner again. Pull planning. We have a lot of conversations about dependencies, how to deal with dependencies, how to chart our dependencies, how to have meetings about our dependencies. Well, our dependencies are basically just work that doesn't match your current organizational structure. That's it. So in a construction project, at any given point in time, there's a number of different companies on site doing different things. So you might have drywall and plumbing and electric and HVAC all at the same time. Okay. If you don't plan out their work, they will end up in the same place at the same time. They will start dropping hammers on each other's heads, and people will get hurt. Physically, debilitatingly hurt. So we do pull planning exercises, which is we get everyone together who's going to be working on site over the next 6 weeks. And then we backward plan. What's going to happen? What's going to happen before that? What's going to happen before that? And then we see where there are dependencies. And then we plan for them. Well, that was tough. Imagine if we did that for software. It would change the world. Okay, the complexity matrix. We set this up at Spotify at one point. We were doing a standard story point mapping fiasco. And people said, oh, this is a 1-point story, a 2-point story, a 3, a 5, a 72.6-point story. And we finished the story mapping, or the story pointing, and people got up to leave, but they didn't look happy, right? And so I said, wait a minute, why don't you appear satisfied with this wonderful exercise that we just did? No, like, it's fine, it's fine. So we came back and we did the one in the middle. So the one in the middle is the kitten, crocodile, zombie matrix. It's very scientific. It comes directly from the Dadaist school of management. And kitten is this story does not scare me at all. Crocodile is that's kind of scary. Zombie is that's very scary. And then zombie crocodile, which is at the end, is just like, oh my God, that's totally crazy. And as you can see, it gets so crazy that it goes off the end. And what we found was when people took those same stories that they did the Fibonacci scale to, and they put them on here, there was absolutely no relation to the Fibonacci scale at all. So there were 2-point stories that scared the crap out of people. And the reason, so what happens is when you give something to somebody and you say, can you do this in 1, 2, 3 story points, you're challenging their professionalism and saying, how quick do you think you can get this done? I know that's not what it's supposed to be. Humans do these things, whether we want them to or not. This is a human thing, not a trademarked agile tool thing. So what we found was that it kind of was complexity. So kitten, or it was kind of simple or clear. The crocodile was complicated, etc. And so then we found that then we were able to better plan. And not just better plan the amount of work for that sprint, but then also better plan where we were going to pair mob or swarm. As you went around and things got scary here, the more eyeballs had to look at that thing. Freakishly practical, took about 1.5 minutes and made everybody laugh at the same time. Okay, last bit here on the screen, standard work. Okay, so this is Facebook and their Killarney, Ireland data center. This group here, Facebook makes all of their own hardware. And so they have an R&D group, and then they have data centers. And R&D is like a bunch of crazy people who just like to shove things in boxes. And the data center, everything needs to be locked down. This group of people translated that, like from the crazy space into the lockdown space. Really cool group of people. But all of those Post-it notes there were active things that they had to do. And as you can see, there's a lot more Post-it notes than there are humans in that room. So we had to figure out how do you create standard work for these weird things such that you can give the work to other people. They needed to offboard it, but they needed to be able to visualize that. So planning and direction, how do you know what the work is you need to do? So their work was mostly like, I'm working on these servers, but it's like, no, your work also has to include actually documenting what this standard work is. So when you understand it for a given piece of hardware, you don't ever have to touch that piece of hardware again. All right, so element 2, state and triggers. State is every Kanban that you see right now. What's happening right now, who's working on it, what's stuck, blah, 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 blah. Great. Got that one solved pretty much. Triggers, I would give much money for triggers to be more likely. So how does a change in state on your visual control cause you or someone else in your group to act? What is the response to a problem, to an opportunity, to what have you? Oh. I was like... So in this, there can be complexity. There can be opportunities to pair, etc. So when a project, so like just in 2 or 3 talks today, actually, that I saw, there was this question kind of about how do you trigger a pairing or a mobbing or etc. opportunity. So your team can get together and lay out that definition, right? So we can have solo work, we can have pair work, we can have this, we can have that, but we also have to breed in that psychological safety to say, okay, right now, either the system is triggering or I as a person in the system am triggering for us to have some additional action, some additional reaction to the work that's going on. So when something changes state and there is a trigger for us to do something different, we've noticed that there's a complexity in it and we have to get together and solve for it, then we forget that we have stories to tell about this slide. So I'm gonna do this one really quickly. The first one there is Legal Seafoods outside of Boston, Massachusetts in Boston. And there was a problem at Legal Seafoods at a lot of the places where there was like bosses that would be annoying and then staff that would be annoyed by the annoying bosses. And the annoying bosses would show up and say things like, Is there enough salt on the tables? Did you stock the silverware? Did you vacuum the lobby? Blah, 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 blah. And those daily things were everybody's jobs, so they were nobody's jobs. So the only time that someone did it was when the boss came through and was like annoyed that every single day they had to come tell people what to do. Well, they had to tell people what to do because there was no clarity around what needed to be done. So they built this board that looks kind of like a football pitch, and they have daily, different types of daily work. Some things need to be done several times a day, some every day, some once a week. And they would move the things to done when they were like walking by the board, and they'd say, oh, I guess that they still need napkins. I'll grab some napkins. There, I'm done. It doesn't take very much to trigger action, okay? I'm not going to talk about the Alignmate thing because it's too long, but it's in the book. You'll love the book once you buy it, which none of you have, apparently. So the last bit here is you are always a team. This is an important one because there are so many software teams that I run into where they're like, we just have our individual work, man. We don't really work as a team. We don't need to. Why do you keep bringing up this team thing? Well, even if you have solo work, you need to be part of a team. Otherwise, you and your team and your organization aren't going to learn anything when there's a change. So this group is the estimators at Turner. And the estimators originally didn't want to visualize their work because they didn't ever talk to each other. Because everyone had their own projects to estimate, and then they just didn't need to talk to anybody else. Two women named Amanda and Savannah got frustrated with that, and they built this little room with ultimately this board, and each one of those swim lanes is a different project that has one or at most two people working on it. They do a huddle every day where they get in and talk about the work that's being done. Everybody talks about, you see the squiggles at the end there, but that's their constraints. Which is like anything they're running into that's stopping them from getting their work done. And then they as a group meet afterwards and they solve for those constraints. And then they all learn as a group how to avoid those constraints in the future. So 100 years that did not happen. Aha, I'm pretty chuffed. Okay, so visual PDSA. Plan together, we're doing together. This is true for a lot of companies. We PDSA a lot, but SA not, or PD a lot, but SA not so much. This was one of the stickies that came up in one of our activities with a client. So we want to S. Let's S this puppy. So what is S? What is study? Study is basically remembering the crap that you just did and using that crap to not do crappier crap in the future. So if you want to decrapify the crap that previously was crapping up your work, you've got to stop for a second and say, whoa, that shit ain't happening again. So we want our boards to be able to say, hey, we pivoted, we changed, we solved a problem, something, and we needed to have that memory so that we can go back and talk about it again. So the reason that retrospectives don't generally work very well is because there's a huge gap between a problem happening and actually talking about it. That's number one. So we run into something that psychologists call rosy retrospection, which is when the farther we get away from something crappy, the better we remember it. Like, it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So it's like the first day, it's like, oh, God, I never want that to happen. And then the second day, it's like, yeah, that was really bad. And the third day, it's like, oh, that was kind of uncomfortable. And then the next week, you're like, oh, I totally nailed that. So you want to make sure that your board is saying, oh, no, it sucked. And it will suck again if you don't take steps to get around it. So we want to remember these things because I'm reasonably sure that if I sat down with almost everyone here and talked to you about how great your documentation of your change processes has been, you will tell me how amazing your Confluence stack is and how beautiful everyone updates it at regular intervals and how when something goes wrong, everyone checks it. I should probably just stop talking and turn the projector off because everything is fine. So we want we want to make sure that our visual controls are remembering these things so we don't have to. So Confluence sucks because it takes time to type it up. And Confluence sucks because we're not sure if our edition is a good enough edition to go into Confluence. And Confluence sucks because if you type something in and I go into it later, I don't want to destroy your work by writing over it. So therefore, it doesn't get updated, right? So we want our system to trigger action, and then when that action happens, we want to have some mechanism of recording that action such that we can study things. So here's a bunch of things. I've got 24 minutes and 42 seconds left, so I'm going to choose. I already talked about solve problems together. All right. Economy of scale. Then I will go into the World Bank thing. The World Bank, their mission is to solve poverty. It's easy. They're almost done. So when you have a mission that big, you end up with a retrospective wall about that populated. So all of these people behind that wall at the World Bank are all people who thought their work was solo work. So when they learned things, they didn't share it with their teammates, and there was no mechanism to share that with their teammates. I know it sounds familiar. So how can we build a system that when they learn something, they're able to impart that learning to others in a way that isn't another meeting, that isn't a presentation or a demo? How do we do this? And so this wall, I'm not going to tell you how they did it because that wall was all ideas of how they could get better at doing that. Look at that. I mean, there's a jillion of them up there. There are so many ways that we can communicate better. So when we go in and work with a company, we do something that we call a right environment exercise. And a right environment is everyone on your team or in your company having everything that they need to do a professional job. Everything that they need to act with confidence. Now we start off by doing that nifty VSM thing. Then we go through and we talk to people about, what is it that you all need as a group for this particular project to get your work done? So the hospital project that I showed you, that's a long drive from anybody's house, or a long subway ride, or however they want to get there. So they said, we want a dog. So they got a dog. Pretty cool. So whatever your project needs, how do we make sure that you get that? How do we make sure that you don't feel included, but that you know you are included? That you don't feel empowered, but you're actually undeniably part of the way that the project is being rolled out, right? And then after we do that exercise, we do a third exercise and a final exercise around what information do you need to know? How are you currently getting that information? What are all the technologies that you're currently using to lose your information? And then we reconcile all of that into an internal plan that says, okay, so when we make a decision, we're going to record it here. When there's a change, this happens. When we're doing our work in real time, this happens. When we make splinter projects, this happens. When a problem comes up, this is what we do. And then everybody figures out what they need to communicate and when and how. So when we do those initial exercises and we say, how many technologies are you currently using? There, everybody immediately, they've got Slack and email and Teams and Confluence and like 2 Kanbans and blah, 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 blah. And then you say, okay, now which ones of these do you hate? And then we give them silly little icons and they drop them on the ones that they hate. And we say, which ones do you love? And it usually ends up that they only love 2 of them. And they have like 30 of them and they love 2 of them. It's like, all right, well then let's focus on those and let's see where things should go logically and then never put anything in the wrong place again. So if I go back and look at your Slack instance or your team instances or whatever, I know I'm going to find a lot of conversations that go like this. Hey, you know last week when we decided the thing? Yeah. Where did we decide it? Oh, in that channel. What channel? Oh, I don't know. Maybe that channel? It could be in that channel. Yeah. Let's go looking for it in that channel. Oh my God, 2 hours have gone by and I still can't find the damn thing. Not good. That's where our time gets eaten up. You know. So adjust that bottom part. So these 3 things at the bottom are all culture, right? We'll start. We're supposed to be going in an arc, so we'll do 5 first. So identity. Who are you? Who is your team? How do you relate to each other? Where are your zones of control and your spheres of influence? What is appropriate for you to do as an individual? What is appropriate for you all to do as a team? And do you know the appropriate stakeholders to reach out for if you want to get something done that is outside of your bubbles of control or influence, right? What is your current plan to increase the size of your zones of control and spheres of influence? How are you visualizing that? The second bit there is when a problem comes along, this is what professionals do. So we talk a lot about continuous improvement like it's a weird alien thing. Continuous improvement is what professionals do. If you're not continuously improving, you are not a professional. You are trained in something and your skills are waning every single day. So either you practice and you get better, or you don't and you get worse. That is kind of the harsh reality of continuous improvement from bitchy Jim. Then culture. That's upskilling, it's onboarding, it's interaction with your colleagues, and that one in the middle is kind of the most important, which is human repair. How do we make sure that the people on our teams are supported by the team, either in a professional way by upskilling or in a personal way, like saying, oh my God, your mom passed away, or this happened or that happened. How do we make sure that we're not overloading you at a time of need? So your visualizations are going to help with all of those things. So a quick story about that is we had a woman who used to work with us named Patty, and she was a workaholic, and she loved doing everything. Super OCD. She was everywhere, doing everything all the time. And her father died, and her father was a big part of her family's life, obviously. And she just kind of collapsed, but to deal with that collapse, she dove right into working a lot, and she was doing a terrible job because she wasn't really working to work, she was working to forget. So what we did on her thing in the Kanban is every day we would give her 1 sticky. You can come in each day and you can do 1 thing, and then you have to go off and heal. And we did that for a couple of months, and then gradually she came back. But initially, it was really painful to watch. So your visual controls can help your individual humans who are human get through the human stuff so that they're able to do more of the work stuff. These 3 things at the bottom are adjust, and they are the filters that you use to make sure that the changes that you do are valid, that the decisions that you're making about how to work together are helpful, that the system that you're building isn't just a stupid Kanban or idiotic textbook agile rollout, but it actually meets the needs of the people that you're working with. Every project you work with is blessed to have a band made up of individuals that are unlike any other group of individuals that you will ever work with. And you can either use that to everyone's advantage, including the individuals, or you can ignore it and you can force people to work in a way that some book tells you to. So if your visual control doesn't represent who you want to be, it is not your visual control. It's Jim Benson's, or it's David Anderson's, or it's Ken Schwaber's, but it's not yours. And we're not in your office, and we don't count. So don't do that. So See, Limeade is not letting me not talk about them. It keeps showing up on slides. So I'm going to talk about two things on this slide, and then I'm going to actually show you something online, because I know everybody's like, oh my God, all of these are in a room, and my team's not in a room, and I can't even imagine what it would look like online. It's like, yes, you can. It's your job. You're all software people. I always get this question. I'm like, no, really, like your job is to build crap online so that people who are online can do the thing that they could have done when they weren't online anyway, but they're doing it online. That's like what all of you do, but I can hear you thinking it. So plans evolve. University of California, San Francisco Medical Center. This was a group of people at the hospital who their job, they were the continuous improvement group. And they hated each other, and they hated the hospital because their work was so hard. And their work was so hard because they never improved their own work. They kept running around trying to improve other people's work. And there was definitely a healer, heal thyself moment. So in this particular meeting, which was literally the most tear-filled, crying event that we ever had, these folks finally got together, and these are all the things that they had that they needed to improve upon in their own work. And they weren't doing it because they were too busy trying to make other people improve their work. Sound familiar, Agile coaches? So the middle thing there, the Limeade thing, I'll actually talk about it because we actually do this online all the time. This was the original Doominator exercise, which is one of the more popular things that we've introduced for this. And the Doominator exercise came up because this group had a bunch of technical debt. I love the words technical debt. It's such wonderful doublespeak. So they had made a bunch of really crappy code, and they had called it technical debt because we all do, because we don't want to admit that we actually write crappy code. And so the crappy code was out there, and they needed to fix it. And so they kept prioritizing this massive technical debt list. And every prioritization exercise that we went through, which was mostly stack ranking, it kept coming down to a political thing. I want this. I'm a person with political power. I want this. We don't want to do this. We don't want to touch that, blah, 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 blah. So visualizing the work to receive the results that you want, in this case, adjusting and improving. The top side of that table where everybody's eyes are glancing, that is where if they fix something or if something breaks, it will take down the entire company. At the other end of the table will have no impact. On the side towards the people, you can do it immediately. And on the side towards the top of the table, it would take some work. When they first laid out so first we stack ranked everything, and there were things that everybody definitely wanted to do first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. When we laid everything out on the table, those things had nothing to do with their actual urgency. They had everything to do with how easy they were to fix, or convenient they were to fix, or politically unsensitive they were to fix. So then we ended up with an actual meaningful look at the possible impacts of these stickies. And then we went through and we prioritized things in bundles. These 4 can be done pretty easily together. These aren't going to take much time. This is going to, take not much time and have a lot of impact. But we were able to actually not just stack rank something, but logically lay out how that work would be done. But we weren't able to do that in any way, shape, or form until we visualized that particular data. The last part there is in the board I'm going to show you in just a second. This is actually our board. So at the end of last year, we moved Modus Institute, our online school, to a new platform. And every week, we would take on a new group project, and then we would do it as a group, and then we'd move on as a group, and we'd do it as a group, and we'd move on as a group. And after time, each of those things had little things that still needed to happen to them. So people were off doing little things on their own, and after a while, we lost track of what we were doing and why. So this urgent work must be tamed. All of these things were urgent, and they were all happening at the same time. At the company that runs around telling other people to limit their work in progress, because we're human, and we screw up just like anybody else, right? So let me screw something up over here by trying to actually operate the computer. Okay, come on, you. Oh, there it is. Okay, there it is not. So I'm going to poke it with my finger, and then, damn it, there it is. All right, and then. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Duplicate. This is the Obeya, everything that everyone at Modus Institute needs to know while they're working. So there's about 15 of us. We are hyper distributed. None of us are in the same place. Stop being Miro. Thank you. And so what you can see is we have different operational areas in this. We have operations, design guides, podcasting, calendar, and scheduling, blah, 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 blah. And we have things on the right, which are things that we're actively working on. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this because I don't care if anybody sees it. So what we need to do at Modus Institute in order to calm all of that other work that I just showed you was go through and value stream map out everything that we do to release a class. So there's the initial value stream here, which is basically a bunch of mess, and then up here, concept, infrastructure, marketing, creation, logistics, execution, and afters. And then for each of those, we created an actual analysis of what happens in each section. So I want you to note that the value stream mapping guy is showing you things that aren't value stream mapped because different parts of the work required different analysis and visualization. So if I want anybody to take anything away from this talk, it's that visualizing your work is the only way that your team is going to remember it, and the only way that your team is going to remember it in a way that makes sense is if the work is visualized in a way that the work wants to be visualized. So we have infrastructure, we have marketing, et cetera, and then we have the stuff that we need to do. As you can see, this big red arrow is here. I don't know what that means because it appeared after I left the other day, so that means somebody's working. They're all asleep right now unless Dushantan's really awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. But all of these are stuff that we need to do. And these are like big things, like advertising strategy, right? Social media strategy, like big things. So Dave Pryor, one of our instructors, is about to come out with a course in the art of war and project management. So he's taking the book, The Art of War, and applying it to project management. And so right now he is running through this value stream as a test case, and then we're doing MVPs on a lot of these little stickies, and then we're documenting those in Confluence. And then each time we do stuff, we add more standard work to our work so that after 3 or 4 classes, we should be able to fill in this box, which will show all of the standard work for all of the stuff that we do. I wish I could show you the board from Jimdo, but I cannot because I shouldn't, because it's their board. But let's make that go away and go back to this. Why did that become? Oh, I know why, because there's more than one up. Yes, all right. So how you communicate with each other on your team defines your team. If you don't communicate with each other, then you don't have a team. And that's a sad thing. When you communicate with other people, when you have those triggers, when you have those elements of the visual PDSA, I'll go back to the original thingy. When you have these 7 elements, your communication is a process. So when the Agile Manifesto says individuals and interactions over processes and tools, it fundamentally doesn't understand how people interact. Individuals interact through processes and tools. Processes are how we agree to interact. The reason that we don't like processes is because we often let other people who don't know anything about us tell us how to interact. But when Agile says that it wants you to self-organize, the first thing you do when you self-organize is you set up a set of processes because that's what organization is. And tools are Slack or Zoom or whatever else that you're using to do that with. So yes, you're not supposed to focus on the processes and the tools, but as individuals, if you actually do want to interact, that is through processes and tools. So we got to kind of lose our fear of the process word and also change our definition of it. So, if you are married, which I definitely am, you know that over time you build up different understandings about ways to react to certain stimulus. That you don't freak out about this anymore and you treat this with kid gloves and blah, 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 blah. And that's because you are building an internal process between you and this other person that you care a lot about to make sure that when you're together, you're having the best experience possible, right? So we can roll our eyes and make all sorts of jokes about it, but that's what relationships are. Okay? Buy my book and all that kind of stuff. So at the end here, I'm super chatty, obviously. So I'm Jim Benson on LinkedIn. Super easy to get through that way. I'm our founder on Discord. I don't use Soviet-occupied Twitter anymore, unfortunately. Modusinstitute.com is where we live. Tony Ann, my business partner, and I, and our faculty. There's a large community of people there globally who get together every day and talk about these things and help each other get through the difficulties of being coaches. So that is it for me. I am finishing with 2 minutes and 17 seconds to spare on a talk that could easily have taken 4 hours. So thank you.